recording. Yeah. Later,
Okay.
then you can forward it to anybody.
Sure.
So you can,
Yeah, okay, that's great.
and store it. They can have a look at it at any time.
Yep.
So, and the other guys, Walk 9, is that Gary? And Tosh. So, not too sure who the others are, unless it's my Japanese friend. Trevor, admit. So what I typically do, and what we've done a few times, is give an overview of why the government pays so much money. And being the topic of discussion, I will run through that with people and, reinforce that NDIS is here to stay and it's only getting bigger, more lucrative for us, more and more demand as even the participants learn about what their rights are or what options are available to them. So I'm going to flip over and I'm going to start going through a presentation. Let's have a look. Alrighty. So hang on. We all should be able to see happy.
Are you joining the Zoom? Are you joining? It's just. Huh?
Alrighty. And maybe Trevor can tell me if he can see a happy smiling face in a mauve blazer young lady there.
Yeah, I can see it.
All right, champion. Thanks, Gary. Yeah. All right. So we'll just run through quickly here. We've done it a few times. As I was saying before, we'll run it every Tuesday night. And so feel free to come back. Feel free to send friends. Feel free to send clients, etc., colleagues, and I'll go through the basics. At the end of it, it'll be a little bit different each time. And because there's only half a dozen of us, feel free to ask questions as we go along as well. Virtually all questions will be answered as we go through, but, relatively small groups. So, like I said, feel free to just ask. Obviously, the legal side of things is always at the start. Haven't asked you guys anything about what your finances are like, so won't make any recommendations, but this week I will have half a dozen different properties for you to have a look at as well. That'll give you an exact example of what smart people are buying at the moment and what sort of returns we can expect. Just had an example today of somebody trying to do something themselves, instead of using our advice and our experts, and trying to save a couple $100 on a conveyancer. Ended up the building contract never got signed, and they missed out on buying a house for under $600,000. It's now worth about $900,000. So we see it all the time, and it's led us to these days make sure that people use our finance recommended mortgage brokers. You can use your own accountant, of course, but I'm always happy to pay for one of our accountants to give you a second opinion on what to do with so much income, how to minimise the tax, how to maximise the legal asset protection as well. The conveyancers that we use are not just conveyancers, they're lawyers, they understand NDIS, they've been doing NDIS for 5 years. So in the end, they're actually cheaper than using a conveyancer that needs to read the thing 10 times the contract to read it 10 times to understand what's going on, or just process paperwork and not make sure that everything's in your best interest, is what a lawyer would do. Anybody in their 50s or over, we'd pretty much insist that you see a financial planner, because you could be earning $150,000, $250,000 a year tax-free if the asset's in the appropriate structure. So definitely worthwhile considering. The NDIS has been around quite a while now. It was an election promise from the Labor government. So we were all terrified when we started doing this about 4 years ago that as soon as the Liberals got in, they'd just chop it. However, the Liberals actually spent more money on it. So that was good. And then it became an election football where each party was promising more and more money. Let's have a look. I've got a little video to run through so people can have a look at what an NDIS house looks like. So I'm just going to flick over to that in a second. And what you'll do is you'll notice there's bigger doorways. Let's have a look. Sorry, guys. Just got to optimize this for the sound in the video. Yeah. And Gary, could we hear and see Sharon having a chat? Or James, you can tell me.
Yep, sorry. I've got a blank screen here at the moment.
All right.
Hi. Hello.
Life with high level. I'm Sharon, and my
Can we see that now?
Yeah,
that's
we
good.
got it. Thank you.
No, that's good.
All right.
interested in specialist disability accommodation is as a participant who really wants to progress the ideas of specialist disability accommodation and how important it is to support a person's life with high level complex needs and how that can actually make such a difference. And I really want to explore this more to actually then be able to showcase to other people what might work and how they can.
When we're looking at NDIS houses, they're nearly twice the cost of a normal everyday house. And there's a lot of reasons for that. There's an enormous amount of fixtures and fittings that have to go into them, but also the walls, everyday standard walls. This is for high physical support where we need hoists and joists, reinforced walls, reinforced ceilings to be able to get people into the bath, out of their chair, into the chair, etc., etc. You just have noticed all these extras as you're looking through the house.
Live and do things that they never thought they could do.
We've basically started to talk to the market to be able to say, here is this new segment and it's disability housing. We need to be able to look at it differently to the way we construct today. It's not a rocket science.
You're noticing the giant hospital-sized bathrooms, huge sliding doors, big handles. There's no step anywhere through the high physical support house, even all the way down to the footpath to get off the property. Big wide hallways, huge switch.
It is just good design. Once we sit down with the person, the occupational therapist, the care team, I get an understanding of what the house and home needs to look like. Part of the projects that I've also run is things as understanding what home for life means. So as people age, the need changes. So you try and make the design for future-proofing. I also find by going and meeting the client and their families in their own home, it gives me an understanding of what is actually needed for the person that we're building this for.
Specialist disability.
Notice the lights on the floor to help people get around the house. This is more like an improved livability house for people that just might be vision impaired, low IQ, can look after themselves most of the time.
The accommodation is really important to me as central to the NDIS because it allows a person to have that chance to have a home, a space, be part of the community and celebrate what they really need to make that life come alive.
Alrighty, so we should be back to the presentation, and we should be able to see a screen that says the housing shortage there. So,
Yep.
all right, great, thanks for that.
Sorry. Hi, Jenny from Vietnam.
Yes, I'm here.
Xin chào.
Xin chào.
Alrighty. Okay, and with the housing shortage, so this presentation has been started, the actual presentation I'm running through at the moment was done before COVID. So COVID was one of the best things that ever happened to NDIS, because it stuck a rocket into the NDIS department to get accommodation organised for people, because government thought that we were all going to be overflowing the hospital system. People in aged care were dropping dead at a rapid rate, so anybody that wasn't aged needed to get out of there and to somewhere safer. But there was an enormous amount of effort and money that went into NDIS then. Yeah, and we'll see that as well, and it continues to be that way today. So government started talking about it, 2008, and they thought that 28,000 people would need it. We got to, before COVID, there were 122,000 people that needed accommodation. So in NDIS, there's around 500,000 people that qualify for NDIS. Here there's more than 122 of those that need accommodation, and it's growing, unfortunately. So we know there's a demand. All right, all the young people or people under 65 that were sitting in nursing homes, they had to be moved. Thank you, COVID. Will the waiting list ever go down? We can have a look on the government website and see whether it's going up or down, even based on a postcode area. And we see that unless you're in Hawthorne or Glen Iris or Vaucluse or somewhere like that, it's pretty much always going down. Sorry, it's never going down. Those are the only areas that go down. And, because it's an aged population. But in the newer areas or middle Australia, it's only going up, unfortunately, the demand. And you think about why. There's a couple of reasons. One is that people typically used to get looked after by their family, but their families get older, can't cope with them anymore. And they need to, and the family, mum and dad, might be in their 80s now, so they're getting looked after themselves, let alone looking after a disabled child. All the cars, that we have these days are a whole lot safer than what they used to be, so we don't kill ourselves as easily as what we used to with all our crumple zones and airbags, etc. And then, we've got a controversial area with all the vaccines, but thanks to that, and you can have a look at that in the government statistics about autism and injections in kids, and that's one of the booming areas, unfortunately, in the NDIS too. So, not going down. We were always worried that the government was going to turn it off, being an election promise. But when you understand how much money the government saves out of it, you understand that they won't and that they didn't. And every year on the 1st of July, they release a new pricing schedule, and they may adjust it up, they may adjust it down to dangle a carrot in front of us to get us to be building and investing in what they want us to build in. I shouldn't say they adjust it down, but they may not increase the rent as much in one area if it's not needed, as in another area where they do need it. So, for example, they increased the price for houses with sprinklers by about 20% in some cases, but they increased the rent for houses without sprinklers only 16%. So that's telling you what you need to be investing in with the NDIS in housing. And Then there was also a 5-year review that finished before this new financial year. So every 5 years they have a review. So there can't be too many of them done into the NDIS. And that's a very in-depth review all the way down to the last dollar as to where the money's being spent, how much a carer gets for wiping your backside at 3 o'clock in the morning, to how much each room rent gets paid as well. So all the people that used to tell us it was all too good to be true sort of got a bit of a rude awakening when rent went from about $20,000 a room. All right, so hopefully you can see a purple spreadsheet. That was last financial year. Oops. And what house with 2 residents in it for high physical support was $42,000 over there. Then if we look at this year, hopefully we can see that. Let's have a look. I think we can see that. For 2024 or after 1st of July 2023, the price of 2-bedroom high physical support has gone all the way up to $80,000 a room. So that's doubled. And there's plenty other examples of where it's, even if we look at improved livability, which is the entry level, that's now $67,000 a room in a 2-bedroom or a 2-participant house, whereas previously it was $24,000. So from $24,000 a room to $67,000 a room, it certainly tells you that there's an enormous amount of demand there. And if we also have a look at why the government is paying us this much money, quickly put together a little spreadsheet. And can you see that, Kerry? Or James?
Yes.
Yep,
Yes, I
right.
can see that.
All right, thanks. So very roughly, if you think about, let's say the government's paying you $200,000 a year for the rent for your house. You've got to think why they're doing that, of course. And once you understand how much money they're making and how much money they're saving, it just makes perfect sense. And that's apart from supply and demand. We've already had a look at supply and demand. And if the government wasn't offering you such a huge income to build these houses specifically for disabled people with disability, you really wouldn't consider it. They need to be giving you a whole lot more. They know it's a lot more complicated than an everyday investment property. And so they're bribing you with tons of money to make sure that you actually invest. If we do quickly think how much money they're going to make out of it all, and we have a look, you've got stamp on the land, you've got GST on the building materials, you've got work, the guys that are working on building the house. And, if you lay every nail one after the other and talk to the finance guy and get the council workers involved and everybody involved in building that house, there's at least a year's worth of work in getting it done. If average income is a bit over $80,000 these days, that would mean that there's at least $20,000 worth of PAYG just on the build side of things. Then, let's have a look. Then you've got all the jobs in the house that are going to be required for looking after the participants. So chat with one of the NDIS providers that we work with. We worked out that basically every house that we build creates about 10 jobs. So if we think about that, let's say we've just got people with disability in a house who need to be looked after 24 hours, then that's 3 8-hour shifts for each person. That's 6 people full-time. Nobody works 7 days a week. So you need a couple of extra people. That's just 8 in the support staff. That doesn't include the people that are running the plan managers, the people that are booking them in and out of their hospital, the people that are driving the taxi to pick them up, or the bus that usually these NDIS providers have got. So it doesn't even include those extra staff. And then, of course, they're all paying tax. So there's a whole pile of PAYG there, which the government's going to get as well. Then, even if they're giving you just $150,000 a year, you add that on top of your normal income or put it into some sort of a trust structure, it's going to be very difficult to minimise your tax less than $30,000 a year, I would think. And obviously that's an accounting question, but if you just added it to normal income, you're going to lose about half of that money straight up. And then, of course, you've got the NDIS provider who is getting paid to look after those people and, making quite a, they make obviously a profit out of it. So there's no way in hell that they're not earning a couple $100,000. They might be earning $1 million a house out of these things. So the minimum quick way is around $500,000 that the government is getting back in the first year. Now that doesn't include the reduced from not having these people in hospital where the government's paying all the costs. The government's, if you're in hospital, the government's paying the rent on the hospital or the accommodation on the hospital. The government's paying the nurses' wages. But if you put that into the private industry, then the NDIS provider's paying for that and the government's taxing it and it's reducing its own expenses. Now, Bill Shorten's had a couple of speeches about NDIS in recent times and tells us it costs the government anywhere from $14,000 to $20,000 a week to keep somebody in hospital. So even if they're paying you $5,000 a week, which they do in some cases, it's still a screaming bargain from the government's point of view. So when you just follow the money, as they should have done at 9/11, then we can see that it all makes perfect sense as to why we're getting paid so much for these. Let's have a look. Just let me flip back to the presentation. All right. If anybody wants this presentation, it's got links and the video, links to the videos and the data. So happy to email it out to you as well. When we first started, we had to try and work out where the demand was. And that's basically irrelevant these days because we've come a long way in the last 4 or 5 years and we're dealing with NDIS providers. Can you guys all see a map?
Yeah, I can see that.
All right.
Yeah.
All right, thank you. So we can sit there all day and type in postcodes where we think there might be demand, and then go and have a look at that demand, and then we can also see whether that demand's going up or down. So we used to do that for weeks at a time, and then we'd get in the car and we'd drive out to that area and we'd knock on the door of every NDIS provider that we saw, and we would offer them a wonderful deal and say, if you give us a lease, then we'll get you some houses built. So that's how we started, and now we're dealing with many NDIS providers that actually ring us when they've got demand for more houses. And as long as it stacks up okay for our investors, then we're happy to promote those. And I'll give you some examples of some of those houses in a minute. So virtually every property that we have these days comes with a lease already from an SDA provider. So the SDA provider is the one that looks after the house. The NDIS provider is the one that looks after the person, and they should be completely separate companies these days, so there's no conflict of interest. So we're dealing with multiple SDA providers. They deal with many different NDIS providers. We're dealing with NDIS providers that tell us where they want the houses.
Sorry to interrupt, Joe. Sorry for dumb question. SDA is?
Specialist disability accommodation.
Okay, thank you.
Yeah. So they're the accommodation people. And they're like a normal real estate agent, basically, but they charge us 3 times as much. So typically the SDA provider is going to charge the investor anywhere from 12.5% to 15% these days. And that's for managing the house and having the people come and go and everything else associated with it. So it's all quite time consuming. Anything to deal with the government rules and regulations is very time consuming, and they earn their money these days. Lady in the video talked about a home for life, and that also tells us to hurry up, because once these people are in a house, they're not usually going to move to a different house. The first reason for that is there probably aren't any other houses for them to move to. Secondly is you saw the technology in the houses, and their custom. There's a bit of customization. The consultant there, Robert, said he talked to the family, so they know what they need in the new house. We also have to talk to the NDIS provider who's caring for these people, who knows what they need. We build to a basic specification that ticks the boxes for the government. Most of the NDIS providers have their own requirements, and so we'll build for those requirements, and that's why they'll give us a lease if we build the house how they like. And they need their houses built how they like so that they can have a procedures manual. They can have staff from one house roll up in the next house and, find exactly where the medication's kept, all that sort of thing. It definitely needs to be standard, and the nicer the houses are, the easier it is to fill them and to keep people there as well. So don't move out, which tells us to hurry up and get the houses built, because once they're built, we're going to absorb the demand in that particular area, and then those clients are ours for life. The leases are typical. The government pays the rent for at least 20 years, and if somebody's moved into a house and goes from being under 65, which is when they're in NDIS, to over 65, whereas if they came to need support afresh, they would be moved into the aged care facility. But if they're in NDIS before that, the government still pays them NDIS. So, one of our NDIS providers gives us a 30-year lease, and that would continue as well. So there's some enormous amount of money that you guys need to stick your hand out and grab, because it's ongoing and it's only increasing as well. There's the 4 different categories, and we basically build high physical support, because anybody that requires 24-hour care can't look after themselves, and if we build a house for them, then somebody who's also wheelchair bound but can look after themselves can live in that house, and also somebody who falls into the improved livability category can also live in that house. So if a high physical support person's getting $80,000 a room, the fully accessible might be getting 60, and we saw improved livability, I think, was 65 or so. So when we look at an $800,000 or $900,000 house and one room is getting $70,000 a year, we're not really going to usually argue too much about trying to get the extra $10,000 for the high physical support person, because we're getting about 9 times the normal rent of an equivalently priced property by doing that. And the government, remember before we said the rent from improved livability went from $20,000 to about $65,000 or $70,000 a year. So because nobody was building houses for improved livability people. And now yeah, we're still building the high physical support houses, but we're happy to take improved livability people as well. If that makes sense. Robust is a different category, and if you ever hear anything bad about NDIS, it's typically to do with robust, because they're the people that might have mental issues. Not a whole lot of them, but that's also the category of people that might just have depression, with the brain, been injured, might have very, very bad behaviour as well. So we need a house that's pretty much cyclone-proof, fire-proof, bomb-proof for those sort of people. And of course, if you're an investor and last financial year before the price rise, if you were building a robust house, it was costing you the same as a high physical support house. But a high physical support house, we could get about $150,000 a year in rent. But if you only had one crazy person in your robust house, then you're only getting about $50,000 a year in rent. So nobody was building them. Obviously, the government, they're quite smart with NDIS, realised that was a problem. So that rent has doubled up to over $80,000 a room. And so now plenty of our investors are building robust housing because there's an enormous demand, especially after COVID and the effects of that. We're remembering that you weren't allowed to go and see your mum in Victoria, but you could go to Dan Murphy's and, buy as much depressing alcohol as you liked. Couldn't go see your friends, couldn't go to work, all those sort of things led to an enormous amount of demand for support with mental issues. We've got a couple of examples of those where they are actually now the highest returns for investment properties. With specialist disability accommodation, the problems, if we have a look at it, is it's going to cost us about twice as much to build it as a normal house. When we first started looking at it, it was a problem. These days, it's not really a problem because trying to build a normal everyday investment property is just setting yourself up to lose money the way interest rates are. Rents haven't been able to keep up with 12 interest rate rises in a row, no matter how high they are. So NDIS house finance is going through quite easily, quite comfortably, because our mortgage brokers know where they should be getting the money from. They know how to package it up, and our funders also know what the huge incomes are, so they're not really too concerned about you guys as investors. They are haven't really seen too many people not get finance at all for NDIS, considering like the minimum return might be 15%, and there's some houses that we've got that have got a 30% return on them. So whether the interest rate is 6% or 9% or 4.5%, nobody gives a damn when they've got NDIS houses. And the other thing is that the rent goes up on the 1st of July, indexed to inflation. So with all the leases that you'll see, each year you're going to get an increase based on inflation. So, me and a few of my investors might be the only people in Australia sort of cheering for high inflation rates. So with the cost, we need maybe a bigger deposit to get the build cost done. We need a bit of extra money in the bank to see it through to completion. It's a bit longer to get it built as well. So that means that you're going to be making repayments on the land while it's getting built. And of course, the repayments as each stage gets finished in a new building. There are no existing NDIS houses for sale. Haven't seen one of them get resold. And if you also keep in mind, and we'll do a slide on this soon, but I'll come back to that later. It's just that if we're buying something for about $900,000 and we're getting $200,000 a year in rent, if we once it's completed and there's some income coming in, we've got a 20-year lease, we've got money going into our bank, and we go to a commercial lender. If the income's around 200, then even at a 10% return, which is low, the property that you paid $900,000 for is worth $2 million, as far as a commercial lender's concerned. And even if they only gave you a 50% lend, which would be the easiest loan in the world to get, you've got all your money back plus another $100,000. So me, Gary, and others will come knocking on your door and say it's time to refinance and it's time to come and buy another property, which is what's been happening for the people that have completed over the last 12 months or so. So if we talk about a $900,000 property, the bank might want to see anywhere from $150,000 to $200,000 available in redraw to get that through to completion. And then depending on the NDIS provider that you've got, you might need another $50,000 because some of them only pay every 6 months. So we might need a little bit of a bigger deposit to get that through. When we started, we were terrified that there weren't that many disabled people around, but that's not an issue these days, and we don't really care too much because we've actually got a lease from day one. So finding a participant is not an issue for us at all. We have a look at how much rent the government pays us per room, but that's not your only income. You also get a quarter of their disability pension, and that is their contribution, the person with the disability, it's their contribution to the rent. We get that. And because they're a low income earner, the Commonwealth Government pays rent assistance for them as well. Last financial year, that was just under $10,000. This financial year, it's $11,000. So on top of all the rental figures that you see, there's about another $11,000 worth of income per room. Happy to do cash flow analysis for people, and that will depend on what the interest rate is. Are you buying it in your own names? Are you buying it in a family trust, unit trust, superannuation fund? So once we know those figures, where you're buying, what's the how much does a council charge for rates, and cash flow down to the last dollar to show you what's expected to go into the bank account. Dealing with many different NDIS providers, and we're dealing with people all around Australia as well. So some of them have rent guarantees, some the typical lease is 20 years, and usually that's a 10-year lease with some 5-year options. That's very, very standard arrangement. Like we said, the rental returns anywhere from about 15 to 30% these days, so it's huge. If you consider a normal house, even with people whinging about how high rents are, that's still only maybe a 5 or 6% rental return, but interest rates are about the same. So we're not really making too much money with a normal investment property these days, which is another reason why NDIS is so popular. And property's got its own lease. So before you even reserve a property, you can see what lease comes with it as well. So not really an issue. People used to think it was a bit like DHA, but it's nothing like it. And that's the overview. Happy to answer any questions at this stage. And
Joe, hello, am I on mute? Yeah.
No, I can hear you.
I'm just interested because of my connections would tend to be overseas investors.
Alrighty.
Is there any restriction on money coming in to the property market in Australia from overseas?
Couple of answers to that. The first answer is if they can get the money out of their country, then we're happy to have it, and the government encourages it. So that's the first problem that we found with money coming from overseas. Secondly, overseas investors, depending on which state they're in, have to pay a bit more stamp duty. So the government will slug them from that point of view.
Sorry, you mean which country they're in, or what do you mean?
No, which state they're in. I'm sorry, in which state they're investing.
Oh, okay.
Yeah. So foreign investors in Victoria get charged an extra 5 and a bit %, I think, maybe 7%. Takes up the stamp duty to about 12% or so. Then there's some other fees, but we can also get finance as well for overseas investors. So hang on. So they can actually be buying properties instead of one with that finance. So from a cash point of view, because a lot of them come here, with a big wad of cash, assuming they can get it out of their country. And actually, I just can't see where the screen's gone. I'm just trying to share. Sorry. So what I'm saying is that usually they expect that they need to purchase in cash. However,
Yes.
they don't need to purchase in cash. We can get finance for most. Most. Sorry, guys, the screen's just disappeared on me. It keeps.
Oh.
All right. So hopefully you can see a little picture of a house there with a leased sign on it.
Yep.
So yeah, overseas investors usually they come in with cash. That's the mentality. We would tell them don't spend all their cash on one house because we can typically borrow up to about 50%, including all the appropriate stamp duties and other costs.
Mm.
So instead of just buying one property, they could buy two.
Yeah, buy two for the. Yeah.
There's a couple of really good reasons for that. In that they're going to need tax deductions anyway, because otherwise, is that clear? Little $660,000 house. Can you see that, James?
Yep.
All right. Yeah, because if they just buy it cash and there's $200,000 worth of income coming in, 30-something% of that's just going to disappear straight away.
Mm.
Whereas if they had a loan for the second house, then they've got the expenses typically in the cost of interest. So they're going to have, for the same amount of money tied up, they're going to have two properties going up in value.
And two times income, yeah.
Exactly. So the loan's going to pay itself off enormously fast anyway. So, you think that they've bought a $900 million house and they're getting $200,000 a year in income. It's not really going to take forever to pay off one of those houses. And then, of course,
Okay, sure. So there's no, would there be any country that is disallowed? That's a strange question, but
I don't think so.
Okay.
Haven't come across it anyway. We've got ways to get money in from Hong Kong. We've got ways to get money in from crypto. We've got ways to use people's trade money like barter card as well. So quite flexible with currency and deposits.
Thank you.
So we also have an AFSL licensed fund that was specifically set up to get money legitimately into the country as well. So that's an audited fund by a fund manager that can buy the property in Australia. So there may be some savings there as well about, all the other foreign investor and regulations to have a look at. So,
okay, thanks for that. That's clear.
Yeah, because we had an office in Hong Kong, had one in 3 in Vietnam. COVID sort of destroyed most of those theories, but we can ramp that up again pretty much any time. And India, still got an office in India, and the Indian government's just cracked down on money leaving India or cash specifically as well.
That's been traditionally difficult.
Yeah. So, but there's ways to move that money as well.
Yeah. Okay.
Alrighty, so I'm going to run through a couple of examples in the NDIS world. So this is not an NDIS house, but it's leased by an NDIS provider. So while people are waiting to go into their new NDIS house, a lot of them have to be accommodated somewhere. So this particular NDIS provider in Mildura wants us to buy a few houses. He already had them commissioned to be built, and they're finished or nearly finished. Because he makes so much money out of housing these people, he's giving us about nearly twice the normal rent. So for a $660,000 house, we're getting $800 a week in rent. Comes with a rental guarantee, comes with a lease. The lease will start from day one. As you can see by the house, it's actually finished. There's a couple of these houses, so some of them are finished, some of them are not, but it means income from day one. So that's a very attractive option, especially for anybody that's gone through COVID and had 1,400 builders go broke, 3 years, 4 years to get a house built. Plumbers are earning more than doctors, etc., etc. So we know that these things are completed. They've got a lease. They'll have tenants in them from day one. You'll get money up front in the first month. Now, because they're complete, they're also very good for superannuation funds to be investing into. And yeah, and when you think about how much you might need to buy that in your super fund, we'd need a 20% deposit typically, so $132,000, something like that. Some stamp duty, which is probably going to be $30,000 or more, 160, 170,000. What else? So there'd be if you don't have a super fund already set up, self-managed super fund, there might be $10,000 worth of setup. So if somebody had, up to $200,000 in their super, they might be able to buy something like this. Even if they've tied up $200,000 and they're getting $800 a week in rent, that's a 20% return for their money. Yep. Plus the capital growth, if it doubles in value every 10 years, which it has in the past, and it should, there's another $60,000 worth of returns. So add your capital growth, add your cash flow. Your gross returns $100,000 a year on a $200,000 outlay. So the returns are astronomically better than watching the money float around in the share market up and down. So that's one option, highly recommended. And that's the start. That's sort of entry level. You've got your typical everyday high physical support house. And I've just changed the screen. So, yeah, you can see that place it says Buronga.
Yeah.
Postcode. Yeah, alrighty. So that's just one side of that's the New South Wales side of the Murray River. Land's about 200,000, just a touch over. The build cost is all about the same. The return's a little bit higher on the New South Wales side of the border than it is in Victoria, just a couple of $1,000s. We're already building 11 houses in Mildura, and the demand is huge. So the NDIS provider's given us a lease for these, and he needs another 22. So we know that there's a huge demand. We're in the right spot there. And that's a standard high physical support property. We would need a little bit less money to get into this than other options. We need 10% deposit on the land, 5% deposit on the build. So to start that off, we'd only need 20, another 35, 55, a bit over $10,000 worth of stamp duty, some legal fees, about 70,000 to start that off. And to get it to completion, we'd probably need about 150,000 to get that. Then high income, around the same sort of price, but this is a profit share arrangement. So
Sorry?
not only do we get the
I'm
rent,
just listening now.
might need to mute you, James. This is a profit share arrangement where not only do we get the rent, like I said, we also get a share of every service that's provided to the people living in that house. So they're going to get behavioural psychologists. Remembering robust might be the depressed people, the crazy ones. So they've got behavioural psychiatrists, they've got doctor's visits, they've got art classes, they've got physiotherapy, speech therapy, all those services that all the NDIS people get, we actually get a share of that profit. So if a doctor comes and visits, he might charge the NDIS $300 as the scheduled fee. The being on staff of this particular NDIS provider, he might be earning $100 an hour. So whatever that difference is, that all goes into the one bank account, and we get a share of that as the profit. So we get 40% share, and the NDIS provider running and doing all the work is 60% share. Remember before I said that nobody was building robust houses because we were getting less rent than a high physical support house. So one of our business partners, Savvy Spotter, went off to the NDIS providers and said, we know you've got thousands of people waiting. If you give us a better deal, then we can float it past our investors. So he got a spectacularly better deal. The expected income for that $850,000 house is over $250,000 a year. It also comes with a lease. It's a 30-year lease. It's a 20-year guarantee in there, $48,000 a year. So even if there's nobody there, we're still getting more than a 5% return, I think that is, or about a 5% return, which is pretty good. But if you'd had 20 years of a rental guarantee at $48,000 a year, it's $1 million rental guarantee. So you end up with a free house no matter what happens. However, because of the huge demand, the income's more like the 250 grand a year, and that was before rent went up as well. So it's a bit more than that these days. That's in Victoria. We don't worry about capital growth in any of these things at all, because we're manufacturing capital growth. So once that's built, once you've got some income coming into your bank, we're going to go to a commercial lender and we're going to say, we've got a 20-year lease, here's the bank account, revalue it, and then you'll be able to buy another couple. So that's why I'm nice to you all, and all this work and stay up late at night for free, because every year until you've got enough money that you don't know what to do with, you can, and we would expect you to be buying another investment property at least. And that's what's been happening. Alrighty, so that's the end of it from my point of view. Any questions from anybody? If you want to email me or Jasmine, I can send you any of the things that we've gone through, presentation, examples, overview, and answer any other questions that you might have as well. Alrighty, ladies and gentlemen, thank you very much. All done.
Okay, thank you very much, Joe. Appreciate it.
Yeah, my pleasure. Anytime. And also, we'll do these every Tuesday evening. So if you want a refresher, tell your friends, tell your clients that they'll be on each time. All right, lovely.
Thanks, Joe.
See you guys.
Bye.